Hi, I'm Jackie from Travelling Thread Co. We're so excited you've chosen our kits. Come on, let's get creative. Let's unbox our kits and make a Forager bread bag together. The first step for this project is to open up the beautiful main fabric that you have in your kit. Get it to the right side. We've got the wrong side here, the right side, and do the same for your beautiful linen piece. When we've got the right sides of our fabric together, we're actually going to mark on just one side. We're going to leave a 10 centimeter or 4-inch gap, and we're going to put pins there that will indicate where to stop sewing and where to start sewing. I've now clipped, or you can opt to use pins around the entire project. My beautiful right sides are facing each other, and I have that 10 centimeter gap or 4-inch gap marked. Starting at the bottom pin of that gap with the majority of our fabric out to the left so it doesn't get all caught up, it's nice and smooth through the machine. We're actually going to sew using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So we're going to reverse stitch to start, and we are then going to sew down to our first corner, leave our needle in, pivot, and continue to stitch around the remainder of the project, reversing at our final pin. That's our gap opening, and we'll be pivoting at each corner. Let's sew. It's going to be a 1 centimeter allowance across this whole project. We're going to move our pin, lower our presser foot, and that's the lower pin of the gap that we're leaving. So that's where we're going to start, and then we're going to finish at our other pin to leave that beautiful gap. We're going to reverse to start. I always like to use my hand wheel to reverse. Just gives me those 1 or 2 stitches to hold it beautifully into place. And then we're going to go to our first corner and pivot. You want to make sure with linen that you are guiding it. It can sometimes feel a little bit otherwise, like it's trying to do what you're not wanting it to do. So I'm just making sure my corners are relatively well matched. As I'm coming down towards it, I will stop just a centimeter shy. You can mark your pivot points, or you can just eyeball it. And I've left my needle in, lifted my presser foot so that my fabric doesn't go anywhere, to pivot to continue to stitch around. I'll do that at every single corner. Remember to lower your presser foot again before you continue to sew. Sometimes as you take a clip out, you'll need to just double check and readjust your linen. We don't want to push and pull it because it can skew the fabric. So we just want to shuffle it, make sure it's nicely across, gently guiding with our fingertips. Once again, just gently guiding it over to itself. We're nearing our final pivot, leaving our needle down into the fabric, lifting the presser foot, pivoting, lowering it back down, and we will stitch to reverse finish at our final pin. Reverse stitching at that final pin. We have now stitched around our entire project at each corner, and we have a beautiful gap to be able to turn it through. Now you want to trim any of your loose threads, and you'll also want to trim down your corners. Not too close to the stitching, but just a nice trim down of the bulk at the corners. Do that to all 4 corners. You want to discard the little bits that you trimmed off, and then we're going to go back to our machine and we're going to use a zigzag or an overlocker to just edge all of our nice raw edges. That will keep it really sturdy when we do turn it in. Because we are not top stitching, we want to make sure that these edges don't fray, because this will be a product that you'll want to wash and launder. Let's go back over to our machine and switch to a zigzag stitch. We'll stitch in the same manner as we need to leave that gap still. So where we started sewing, we'll also zigzag, and we'll pivot all the way around and finish where we also finished our straight stitch. We do not want to zigzag the gap. Place it down so that your zigzag stitch is basically going to run all directly through down the center here. So the center mark, or where your needle is, you want to be centered between the raw edge and the stitch line. And once you've got that in the right spot for yourself, you can start to sew. As we've snipped the corners, you can choose to reverse the zigzag and just lift without trimming your threads. Turn your fabric, no need to leave the needle in to pivot, and lower it back down. Reverse and continue to stitch. Do this to each of the corners. Once again, there's no need to lift it and snip your thread. You can just reverse, pull it around and continue to stitch. As I've come to the end, I have just finished that zigzag off in the reverse and maintained that gap. Very important because we need to turn it through. Now you might want to just go around and trim gently down, not too close to the zigzag, just to tidy the edges off, and we'll turn it through. Get to this beautiful gap here and turn it through. So just gently pushing the fabric through. I like to use my little wooden knitting needle as my point turner. You could use a end of a blunt pencil. Don't want to poke it through the fabric, so you just gently maneuver it at each corner. Okay, once you've got all of your corners turned through, you'll want to turn on your iron and prepare to press. Okay, it can be a little bit of a labor of love doing this part. With linen, it can be a little bit tricky, and we're going to do a lot of sort of maneuvering and finger pressing. Zhuzh your edges so that they end up nice and even before you press them. You can kind of get it down onto your pressing mat. Make sure they sort of match up as well as they can. We're not after perfection. It's a beautiful rustic Forager bread bag, and then we want to give it a press down so that it's looking beautiful for the next step. I'm starting on the side of my gap because I'm wanting to make sure that I press in that centimetre seam allowance, which will help when I am using my ladder or invisible stitch to close that up and continue to press around. You want to press around the entire square. Once you've pressed around your entire square, we are going to grab the beautiful little hand sewing needle that was in your kit, and we're just going to do a single thread through and pop a little knot in the other end, trim that little end off. Okay, we are ready to ladder stitch or invisible stitch here. If you've done one of our kits before, you will already know this amazing stitch. If not, you'll see that I have just done a bit of a light pin. I find that easier with linen because you do want to sort of get it in the right spot to close this up. And that where you want to start, so where the gap begins. So for me, that's just right there. I can see where my sewing finished. I'm going to, from the inside, pop my needle up and through. That will hide my little knot and I'll be able to just trim him down eventually. We're now going to thread our needle through about 1 centimetre on that beautiful fold line on one side, bring it up, and then directly across from where I just came up on the other fold line, on my other piece of fabric, I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to go up a similar distance, coming up and through, then once again over that opposite side, going to follow that fold line, come up and through, and like a little mindful activity, the same thing again over on this other side. You want to continue this until you get down to the other end of the gap. Okay, I'm down the other end. I have just gone directly across and up just where my gap finishes. And to finish it off, I'm just going to ever so slightly catch the fabric, come back up through where you just went, and instead of pulling it all the way through, put your needle through that part and it will knot that off. Find that nice little spot that you just did that in, slight catch, and do it again before you pull it through. Just knot that. I'm going to do it one more time for good measure. We know that's really nicely held, that stitch then. See how I'm putting it through before I'm pulling? Okay. Then all your pins can come out. You can snip your threads, pop your sweet little needle somewhere else, and if you smush it a bit, you'll then notice no stitching. Beautiful, a beautiful invisible way to finish this, making it look really premium. You can give that a slight little press and stay over where your pressing board is, because we are about to start the magic of doing our beautiful petals that are also going to become our tunnel for our drawstring. We now have our beautifully lined square, beautiful linen square. It's closed up, we've pressed it all, and we are ready to form our petals, which also become our tunnel for our drawstring. You'll need your little pins in your sweet pin cushion and a measuring tape. We are going to measure from each corner 18 centimeters. I'm just going to put a pin there. And I want 18 centimeters from my top corner, so in both directions. And then basically this is where we are going to create our fold. So because I want this as my beautiful outer part of my bread bag, I'm choosing for my petals to be the brown. So that will be little petals on the outside that you see. If you would like it the other way around and you would like the brown to be the majority and the petals to be the floral, or our orange linen, or any of the ones you've chosen, at this point you get to choose which is your main outer part of your pouch and what are your petals. So if I'm wanting to do floral as main, I have it right side facing. I've marked 18 centimeters from the corner, and I'll be doing this to each corner, and I'm going to pull it down to that point at which I can then pull my pins out and Then I'm going to press. I'm going to press that down and keep that all beautiful. Okay, we want to do this for each corner. As you've pressed it, it might actually be quite handy to use either your clips or your pins. I'm just going to pop a pin down the bottom and the other one that I used to mark my 18 centimeters at the top. So then it will hold it down and it's beautifully pressed. Do this to all 4 corners. Now that you have pressed over each end and you've used those pins from marking your 18 centimeter, or for our beautiful American sewists, that would be the equivalent of 7 inches. That's our 18 centimeter mark. If you're a beginner and you don't have a machine that has the markings on it in order to guide you for your seam allowance, you might find it easier to mark in and use the beautiful pens or the chalk that came in your kit and draw your line. We're marking in 1.5 centimeters from the side, and I just made 2 different marks and traced a nice straight line. You can then follow that with your needle. Otherwise, you're welcome to just use your machine to follow your seam allowance at the 1.5 centimeter mark. So then when I've got it pinned, and if you're choosing to rule your lines, you would do that for all 4. We're going to go over to our machine and make sure we switch it back to that straight stitch setting, because we have been in a zigzag stitch for the inside finish. At my machine, I've switched back to a straight stitch setting. That's width at 0, length I usually like to go between a 2 or a 3, and back onto my straight stitch. We are then going to either use our 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeter line to follow while we sew, or the drawn line that you chose to do on each of the petals. We're going to start lowering our needle right in just at the start. There's no need to stitch in between. Just right in at the start, we're going to do a back stitch. We're going to sew all the way down and back stitch at the end. You'll do that to all 4. Lower my needle, a nice little back stitch to hold it in place, and sew down to the bottom. Just guide gently with your fingers as you sew. You don't want to push and pull, especially linen. You can sort of see now that we've folded it, it's on the bias, and we would stretch it around. So we want to make sure we are not stretching it, just leaving it where we had done a nice press and just gently guiding it through. Reverse at the end and do that for all 4 of your petals. This is creating the tunnel for our drawstring. Now that we have all 4 of our petals stitched all the way around, so remember we just did each one, no need to sew any of that. All 4 of them are beautifully sewn. We are going to set our Forager bread bag aside and grab the drawstring piece. That is a beautiful long piece cut in your kit. All we're going to do to this is right sides together. We are going to press down the entire length of it, remembering that with linen we don't want to stretch and pull it, we just want to gently match it and press it as we go. Once it's all pressed, we're going to go to our machines. We want to start by doing a reverse stitch, and then because it's pressed, it's nice and easy to just navigate through the machine. Nice and soft fingertips, don't push or pull, and sew all the way to the other end. Reverse stitch at the very end of that beautiful long line of mindfulness stitching, And we are ready to turn this through. You can select what you want to turn it through. You could use a safety pin, or I've got this like elastic pull that I'm going to use. It's entirely up to you. Get it so that it's nice and tight, and just sort of wrangle that first bit. You'll do much the same if you have a safety pin. You'll pin it to the top here and start to push it through. It's why we haven't made it too narrow. We don't want this to be difficult. We will just want it to be nice and easy. So I'm going to continue pulling. You'll navigate your safety pin through in much the same way. Gently down the entirety of the drawstring. Once you've pressed it all beautifully, got our seam down the bottom there, and I am going to use that same preferred method of pulling through to navigate my drawstring through the tunnel. So once again, you might have one of these, you might also have a safety pin. We've made it so that it's got a nice amount of room so that you are not struggling to pull it through, and you are wanting to start at any point, continue around the entire way. So just one after the other, pulling it through. I would recommend to just put a little pin or peg in place to make sure that you don't actually pull that out as you navigate your way around. So you can sort of shuffle it into itself. We know that we've got that nice end secured, and continue in order, one at a time. Okay, so I've come back around and I'm at the point where I started. I've got this nice and secure. What I'm going to do is really create those beautiful petals. That is just looking so divine. This is magical when you see this part happen. And I'm going to now undo where I'd pinned, because now I'm going to really make sure that that's all beautifully zhuzhed around, and I can readjust this soon, but that is essentially how it's working. We've got these gorgeous little natural rustic folds. We've got our 2 drawstrings out this side. So the last step will be to take your safety pin out or loosen your pulling tool. And optional, you could leave them raw and just give them a little trim down, or you can just tuck those in and you can stitch with your machine, just a nice little edge stitch. You might also want to use that invisible ladder stitch that you learned earlier. You just want to maneuver that around a little bit so that it's nice and even. You'll just want to do like a nice little edge stitch or the invisible stitch that you learned. Well done. You now have this beautiful Forager bread bag. It's got its gorgeous gathered petals and its beautifully finished drawstring. This is the perfect gift to yourself, gift to a friend, any kind of birthday or a seasonal thing like Thanksgiving or Christmas time. It is absolutely stunning. You can use it as a forager bag in your garden. It fits an amazing sourdough cob loaf perfectly. And this is just absolutely premium luxe, gorgeous linen, beautiful, super fun to sew. And we really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial with us.